Alright, so hopefully the audio is actually going to be usable for this right now. So in the ICS Discord, they are making a tier list, and so I am going to be making my own tier list and showing it to them to contribute, I guess. Also, I've been wanting to make a video like this for a long time. So, first off, normal workers. It's going to be hard to rank workers because, well, it just is. So these are, I assume, black ant or eruptor workers, and... Sorry. Yeah. No, you're not being nuked, I'm just loud. I'm going to put them in A, because you kind of need workers, and, if these are eruptor workers, then you can get really good buffs with royal jelly, and if they're not, then, I mean, they're workers, they're pretty unremarkable. Black ants, C. So I'm going to do, C is just sort of there. Anything above C is good, so B is pretty good, A is good, and S is the best. D is not great, E is bad, and F is terrible. Slave makers. I'm actually going to put them in A, because they actually gain a huge bonus when they're fully upgraded. They get, like, 2 or 3 times their normal stats. Something big like that, and, so they're one of the few ants that you actually want to upgrade right off the bat. These dudes, the tanks, wood ant tanks, B. Everyone puts them at F because, like, they do no damage and they're terrible on their own and stuff. And yeah, but they're not supposed to be used on their own. That the whole point is to tank damage while the gunner ants shoot at the enemy. So I'm gonna put them in B. Pretty much any other normal ant is better for tanking because they can actually do damage, but these are still usable. Mortar ants, bad. I kind of want to put them below D, but I'm not going to do that. They're way slower than rapid fire. They keep missing their shots. They have more damage to make up for their slower attack speed, but it's actually not enough to make up for it completely, so they actually have lower DPS than rapid fires, which, by the way, are going in S tier, because they're pretty cheap, and their level 3 ability allows them to slow down enemy attack speed, which is fantastic. Also, they can, because they're ranged, you don't need to be in a really wide open area for them to actually be useful, so you can fight in narrow corridors, which most other ants can't do. Leafcutter media. I guess B. They're pretty good fighters, and they can harvest quite a lot. I'm going to be ranking them on story mode stats, because they do get changed in like, free play, but in story mode, they're pretty good fighters, and they're pretty cheap. They're more expensive than, like, black ants, but given how easy it is for leafcutters to get food, that's not really a problem. Taunt leafcutter majors, S tier. The taunt ability actually heals them whenever they use it, which the game never tells you. You have to just figure that out on your own for some reason. And at level 3, they gain very high defense at low health. Also, the taunt ability, makes enemies target them instead of other ants, so you can, if you have a bunch of them, then sometimes the enemy will just keep changing their target and attacking different ones, whichever one is taunted last. So instead of focusing all their damage on one of your ants, then they'll spread it out, and so it'll take longer for your ants to die. Stun majors go at A. In and of themselves, they're leaf cutters. They're still really powerful, but the ability to stun is really not helpful very much in this game, because most things are immune to it, other than small enemies and other ants. So they're good against other ants, I guess, but even against that, taunts are still better. Oh, speaking of which, mortar ants, mortar wood ants, they actually are decent against crowds too, but only if you level them up to level 3. Rapid fire is good regardless. Trapjaw ants are going to go in, I think, A. They also have a heal ability. When they're low on health, they will use their jaws to yeet themselves backwards and heal a bit, which also gives the healthier ants a chance to run in and start attacking while these guys are further back. So they're pretty good. Definitely better than black ants. Army ant media, D. They're not very good at all. They're at the same cost as fire ants, but they're way worse, and you don't get extra ones at level 3, and they don't have the pervasive or vigorous buff, so you don't get free hatches, you don't get extra stats upon spawning, you don't get the second ant at level 3. They're just bad. The only reason to use them is if you're just using war ants. What are they called? Army ants, that's the word. The only reason to use them is if you're just using army ants and you need something cheap to use. Speaking of which, army ants are going in A. They're really good if you can get a lot of them, which is true for pretty much any ant in the game except for little black ants, which I'll talk about later. They have the damage buff ability, which increases the damage of themselves and allies the longer they've been attacking, so they get more of a buff the longer they've been attacking for. Problem is, they're actually really squishy for being tanks, or for being major ants, and they are the second most expensive ant in the game. Stink ants are the only ones that are more expensive, and they're 300 per each. These are 170 per each, which is more than leaf cutters, and leaf cutters are just better at everything. Ooh, I'm going to keep them in A and not put them down at B, just because if you can get a full chamber of them or something, then they can actually do really well. But the fact remains that they're really squishy. They have decent health. They have like 100 and something health and a 20% damage resistance, I believe. But the problem is just that it just takes so much food to actually get them going. So, like, by the time you've gotten enough army ants to do a good job, you could have made a bunch of other ants for way cheaper to do just about as good of a job. So, they're honestly overrated. Fire ant workers, they're gonna be... I guess I'll put these workers in B tier as well. Oh yeah, link for this will be in the description, or you can just copy this link that you see here, but you'd have to type it all out individually, which is hard. I'll put the link in the description so you can make this as well. And if you do this, please put your results in the comments. You can just take a screenshot of it, or you can, I don't know how else it says share on Twitter, share on FB, I guess that's a thing you can do. But yeah, put a link to your tier list and let me know what you would do, or you can just comment and tell me what ants that you like the most. Okay, there's a little gap between B and C, and that's annoying me. Also, that rhymes. Yeah, I feel like workers there is probably good. All the workers are pretty much equal. Pervasive fire ants, A tier. They are, I think fire ants are actually the strongest ant in the game overall. They don't have the highest stats individually, but you can get so many of them, and they get an extra ant at level 3, which means the efficiency for leveling up is way higher than any other. I can't put fire ants at the same level as army ant majors. That's crazy. You know what? Pervasive ants are going to go in S. No, I'll keep the war ants there. Forgot the word. Army ant. I'll keep them down there. That they're just way too expensive to get going. They cost more than bullet ants. And yes, they don't need to be upgraded to level 3 to exist, but they kind of need to be upgraded to level 3 to survive more than a couple seconds in a fight. And it takes so long just to get a few of them. Even if you combine them with these guys are also really weak and squishy, so they're not good. But pervasive fire ants, you know, they have the normal fire ant buff of getting double ants at level 3, and also they hatch for free if the egg has been on the tile for 90 seconds, which is way too long in my opinion. Also, fire ants are already really cheap to respawn. It only takes like 4 food to rehatch them, which isn't that much. Pervasive ants are really good though if you're early game and you're low on food, because you can afford to take more risks because you know that you'll just hatch for free. But the fact remains that it takes way too long for the free hatch to charge up. They are really good if you lose your entire army in like a failed attack on another colony or something. You can just respawn the entire army for free, even if you're out of food. So that's where they really shine, is if you lose your entire colony just about and you don't have any food or any means to get food, you can still replenish all of your ants, which is pretty good. I kind of want to put them in S tier for that, but no. Vigorous fire ants are in S tier. They get a 50% damage, defense, and speed bonus for 2 minutes after spawning. That's even longer than... I was going to say it's longer than pervasive ants, but the lower the number is for pervasive ants, the better it is. For vigorous, the higher the number would be better. Yeah, 50% bonus stats are insane, especially when taking into account how cheap they are. Plus, they get the fire ant double ants at level 3. And the extra speed is also really good for harvesting as well. So they're probably the strongest individual ant in the game. It's kind of crazy. I feel like they need a bit of a nerf, like maybe their buff should give them only 40% extra stats for a minute and a half, and pervasive ants should get like a free hatch after 60 or 70 seconds instead of 90. I don't know. This is a big-headed ant workers, I believe. I think these used to have really good... Yeah, these used to have really good damage against everything, actually. They used to have good damage, but... you know what, let me look this up. I want to get this accurate. Let's see. Oh, goodness. Hooded Horse has quite a lot of stuff. Where's Empires of the Undergrowth? There we go. Empires of the Undergrowth. Where's the wiki? Where's the wiki? Fandom. Here we go, finally. Okay, let's look for big-headed ant. Page title matches. That exactly matches what I searched for. Why does it not just take me there? Okay, ant miner. Where's damage? 2 damage. 2 damage is quite a lot for a worker. And they only cost, 20 because they're workers. And 2 to rehatch. That's actually pretty darn good for a worker. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in A tier, because you can get away with actually using them for an entire colony. Oh, hi. My dog is here. Hello. Come here, come get pets. Okay, he's going to help me with the tier list. He's going to provide moral support. Big-headed ant majors. They go in C tier. They do get extra stats upon spawning, like vigorous ants, but only in free play and custom levels. In the story, they're a little bit more expensive than the workers, and they're not that much better. They have the same amount of health, actually, which is crazy. And... well, if you upgrade them, they get slightly more. The damage... well, they also have piercing, so they ignore enemy armor a bit. The damage is only slightly better, though. So, yeah, they're not that great. big-headed ant super soldiers, which I just call majors or even just soldiers. I'm going to put them in B tier. They're really expensive considering how good they are. They're 140, which is almost as much as a leafcutter major, but they're not near as good as those. They are fast, they can stun enemies, they can execute weaker enemies, so instantly kill them, but those are weaker enemies, which you can just kill normally anyway, so that's not really that helpful. And also they keep falling over, which is not helpful, but they do have very fast attack speed, and occasionally they'll do an area of effect stun, so they're not bad, but they're not fantastic. If they were cheaper, then they would be a lot better. Little black ants. F. You're gonna hate me for this, but here's my reasoning. Little black ants, they have a very low power floor, but also very low power ceiling. Power floor is the lowest level they can be at in terms of upgrades and quantity and stuff like that in order to be good. No. You can make them pretty strong early on, so that's their power floor, but their strength caps out really quickly. So even if you have like 200, that's not much better than having like 50. So that's their power ceiling. Their potential for, like, army ants have a really high power floor and ceiling because they cost a ton of food to get down, but once you get a ton of them, they're insane. But these guys, they do have a confuse ability, but it doesn't work on everything, much like stun majors. They have very little health and damage, and they're really good against other colonies, or pretty good anyway. But once you start fighting anything that's immune to their confuse ability, they're not good at all, because a lot of enemies, because they can just get one hit by pretty much everything, and yeah, level 3 only costs, what, 25, I think it's like 25 for each soldier, so that's 75 for a level 3, but that's 75 food just for one, and they can't get any stronger than that. Black ants, however, it only costs 50 for level 1, and you can upgrade them twice more past that. So base black ants are better than upgraded little black ants, generally. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, black ants have extra attack speed at level 3. So that's something to keep in mind. But these guys just keep getting one shot, and any enemy that has an area of effect ability, they're all dead. Which means even if you get a ton of them, as soon as they get close enough to reach the enemy, they start dying instantly. So it's really hard to get them to do anything, because yeah, you can get a lot early on, but then they stop gaining power really quickly, because you can only fit so many ants in one attack at once, and if half of them die every few seconds, that's really not helpful. And most enemies in the game are immune to confuse, the stronger ones, so bad. Both medics are going in S tier. Anesthetists, pretty sure that's how you say it, they have if they're at level 3, no, if they're at level 1 or 2, if they're not at level 3, they gain an ability to lower enemies' attack speed by stinging them, which is super helpful, and if you get them to level 3, they also increase the damage enemies take once they sting them. And they're also 75 food, which isn't that much. So they're actually really good. They're actually pretty good for combat. They do as much damage as black ant soldiers, and they only cost a little bit more. And you can upgrade them. But also, they're matabily medics, so they can bring ants back to life, heal them at the queen, and then you can get double ants. So you can get double your max ant army size. Like if you have 20 ants, you can double that to 40 ants if all of them get regenerated. Because you can have one regenerated ant and one normal ant for each tile you have. So S tier. Fast responders, also in S tier. The matabily ants have the best balance between the two alternate options. Fast responders move and heal much faster. At level 3 they gain a buff that makes it harder for enemies to see them, but that's not too useful. But their speed is so helpful because they can get food faster, they can heal your ants faster. They're just really good. So it's situational which one's better. So I'm gonna say they're both S tier. This is matabily soldiers. I'm gonna say S tier because they're like leaf cutters, except they have less health but more damage. They don't have a special buff at level 3, but they don't need it because they're already just super powerful. Also, matabily ants, their food is termites, and they can get food a lot fast. Both matabily ants and leafcutter ants, yeah, they're expensive, but they also have a much easier time getting food. So I'm putting them both up here because that offsets the high cost, unless you're playing as Eruptors. Let's see. Yeah, so they're basically a more damage focused version of leafcutter majors. And I wanted to say something else about them. I mean, the fact that they automatically get paired with these guys makes them stronger. So I'm going to count that as... I'm going to factor that in. Stink ants, I believe this is. Is this stink ants? Well, what are these then? Oh, driver ants. Okay, yeah, stink ants, F tier. They have the opposite problem from little black ants because they have the potential to be really strong if you get a bunch of them and if you get them upgraded, but they cost 300 for each. That's 900 for each level 3, and that's not even taking into account the fact that it has to be surrounded by level 2 tiles just to get there. So they're prohibitively expensive. They cost more than bullet ants, more than army ant majors. The only way you can get them to be functional is in free play with all the food levels cranked up. That's pretty much the only way you can make them viable. Or if you're just playing a level that gives you a lot of food to begin with. So it takes absolutely forever just to get one. So they're not bad in and of themselves, but their costs are just insane. I'm not using the E tier, as you might have noticed. Driver ant workers, they are actually worse. I'm going to put them in E tier just because they're cheap, and I kind of want to put something in E tier. They're cheap, but they can't actually do nest jobs. I don't think. Can they? I think they can dig out tiles, but they can't respawn them. Let me look this up. Driver ant. Oh, it teleported me directly to the page. Okay, driver ant worker. Where... Driver ants have been... Driver ant workers are treated as soldiers. Yeah, they're treated as soldiers, so they don't actually do nest jobs of any kind. They can't respawn eggs, they can't dig out tiles. They're only there for collecting food, and you can just use normal workers for that. So they're not good. They are cheap though, so that's the one bonus they have. Driver ant miner soldiers, S tier. That's probably controversial, but they cost 80 food, which isn't that much, and if they're at low health, the lower their health is, the faster they move and attack. And this attack speed buff can get really high. So if you have a good amount of them, which isn't that hard because they're pretty cheap, then they can just like machine gun enemies. It's great. Their health isn't the best though, but I mean they do best at low health, so that's not really a problem. Yeah, they're pretty good. The only downside is that the attack speed and movement speed buff, it triggers once they get low on health, but then it turns off after a minute or two, and then they don't get the buff back until they die and respawn. So that's the one thing holding them back. I'm still going to put them in S tier because they're really good. Same with driver ant majors. They have an ability that stuns enemies and knocks them back, which is I think an AoE ability, so it can affect multiple ants at once or multiple enemies at once. And they're also just pretty powerful in terms of stats, and they're only a little bit more expensive than Leafcutter Majors. I just deleted the... I deleted the page here. I need to keep it. Drive ants attack mostly by biting. Yeah, that's most things. Small soldiers ignore enemies while carrying food like workers do. That's something. Large soldiers can stun and knock enemies back at low health. So, they're pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so they're pretty good. I'm going to keep them in S tier. Termite workers, I'm going to put them in A tier because they process 50% more food than you actually collect. They'll generate 50% extra food for all the food you collect. So if you collect 10 food, they'll give you 15 if they're at level 3. And they're also, really cheap, as per usual. So they're definitely better than normal workers. Major workers, also A tier. They're actually not bad fighters if you can get them in decent groups and you level them up. And they only cost, 30 food? So they're actually pretty good as well. You could theoretically make an entire colony out of these. Also, they have the highest harvest capacity in the game. They get 15 harvest capacity per level, so they can get up to 45 in one trip, which is the highest of any unit in the game. And they're also really cheap and can potentially be used for combat as well, so really good. Termites. The last two were termites as well. The termite miner soldiers. I kind of torn between S and A tier. I guess I'll put them in S tier because they get extra. The longer they attack, the more damage they and nearby allies do, which is really good. They also only cost as much as a black ant, and they have a confuse ability, so they can confuse small enemies and other ants and stuff, which is really good. So I'm putting them in S tier because they're cheap and they're very strong. Major termite soldiers, also S tier. They do 110 damage. That would be insane. They have 110 cost for... It takes 110 food to place one down, and I think 10 food to respawn them, 10 or 11. But they're decently tanky. They do a decent amount of damage, and they increase attack speed of themselves and allies more the longer they've been attacking. So if you combine the two, then you get extra damage and attack speed if they've been attacking for a while. And they're also one of the cheapest majors, if not the cheapest major, I don't remember. No, they're not the cheapest major, but they're pretty cheap and they're really good. So I am factoring in the cost of them and the colonies, the other ants and other colonies that they come with and their benefits. Like with these guys, the matabily, I factored in the fact that they're going to have medics. Exploding termites. I'll put them in A tier because the workers are actually the ones that explode, meaning you can get a lot more of them because they only cost 25 or 30 food each. Only problem is it takes forever for them to charge up their explosion ability. But it confuses enemies when it hits them. And this is a problem with both exploding units, ants and termites. There has just been an update that changes this. I haven't tried it yet, but I'll try and factor that in. They often explode right as they get within range of the enemy, which means that they don't actually do much damage. And sometimes they're just a little too far away, so they do basically no damage to the enemy. And every explosion costs food to respawn. So explosions are really good against multiple enemies, but they're not good against single enemies and big enemies. So I'm going to keep them at A tier. The fact that they're so cheap really helps carry them. Exploding termite Majors. I'll put them in B tier. They're okay. Now I'll put them in A tier. They do. Man, there's a lot of the ants in this game are really good. That's awesome. Pretty well balanced. They do. I don't actually remember everything they do. Exploding termite. Here we go. So let's look at the soldiers. Oh, they're not called majors, they're just called soldiers. They cost 75 food. They have a good amount of health. Food amount. Oh, is that how much you get when killing them? Oh, they generate threat, so that you will distract enemies from your weaker units. They have 20% damage resistance, ignoration. They ignore 20% of enemy damage resistance. They have quite a bit of damage, 6 to 9. That's pretty good. If they are underground, then they have a snap ability, which does 60 to 100 damage. That's quite a bit, and I think it also stuns enemies. Not 100% sure about that. On the surface, they also have that ability, but it does less damage. Let's see, where is... Exploding termite soldiers have the fastest bite speed in the world due to their asymmetrical jaws. Level 3 exploding termite workers have a 100% chance to fend off forward flies after they become mature. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Oh yeah, also, exploding termite workers, what was I gonna say? I forgot. Oh yeah, the exploding termites in general, they don't have to process their food from lignocellulose. Like, they just collect the food and it's usable immediately, whereas normal termites have to wait for it to transfer into normal food. So their food is more of a slow burn thing, because once you get a bunch of level 3 miner workers, you can get a ton of food, but it's slow to generate the food early on. Next up, exploding ant. Exploding ants. I'm only going to put them in B tier because they're decent fighters. In general, they have... Let's probably do this. What? That's exactly what I typed in. Maybe it's because I didn't capitalize it. Let's see. Here we go. Maximum damage taken per hit is 50, so if you get them to level 2, then they take 2 hits to kill at best. They have pretty good damage, actually, and decent attack speed, but they explode when they get near enemies, which... This is definitely worse than the termites, because while the termites take time to charge the explosion up, these guys are so expensive. Each explosion individually costs 6 food, and you can't just tell one ant to explode. They don't explode on death, so if they die before they can get an explosion off, they're just useless, and it wastes the explosion potential. And also, they have the same problem of the termites, that they explode too far away. So if you just want a couple to explode, you have to quickly toggle explosions on and off, which isn't great. And then, so either not enough of them will explode, or too many of them will explode. They are very good against enemy colonies, though, because you can get a bunch of enemies bunched up with other soldiers, or even with these guys if you have enough of them, and then you... Excuse me. And then you blow them up, and you can kill a ton of them at once. So, they are situationally good. I'm not going to put them in A tier, though, because they require a lot of micromanagement to be good. Honestly, I feel like they need a bit of a buff, but they did actually receive a buff in the last update, so I'm going to keep that in mind when ranking them. So, see, yeah, B tier seems about good. The biggest problem is they're so expensive, so you have to be very sparing with the explosions, and it's hard to manage them. You can make it so they only explode if attacked, which is you turn explosions on but combat off, so if something attacks it, it goes into combat mode and it explodes. So that's pretty cool. But again, if they die, they don't explode, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they made that. I really feel like they should explode automatically if they die, but whatever. These are exploding ant soldier or majors. They're tanks which are meant to, I guess, hold ants at bay until these guys can show up and explode at them. They're pretty good. They have a buff that if they're underground, they can increase the defense of all nearby allies, which is pretty helpful. And let's look at these guys, major soldiers. Hunker, yeah, so it gives them 1 to 2 armor. Oh yeah, the minor soldiers get a big speed boost. Buff boost. They get more speed at level 3, which isn't particularly helpful, and it's really not worth. The explosion damage, does the explosion damage increase at higher levels? Yeah, but not that much. Not worth it at all. You can make them stronger with royal jelly, but I'm just going for the base units. But these guys can increase defense of themselves and nearby allies if they're underground. They also take less damage from the front. They're kind of like turtle ants, which are the ones that their heads are door-shaped. They're kind of like those. But by themselves, they're pretty weak, just like these guys, so I feel like this is a good spot to put them. They are, I think, the cheapest major ant to make. How much do these cost? 85. Is that the cheapest major? I think so, probably. So, yeah, that's a good place. Bullet ants, I'm going to put them in A tier just because they're so expensive. It costs 150 per level, and you have to get them to level 3 just to get them to spawn. So that's 400. 400? Let's see, 150, 300, 450 food just for one of them. And if you don't choose lean pupation, they also cost 150 to respawn. If you do choose it, you get it costs 50 to respawn, which is a lot better. It's basically mandatory, and I will actually be counting that, because the only time they actually appear in any colonies, in Eruptor colonies, which have access to royal jelly. They do a ton of damage, and they can stun anything, including big enemies like giant mantises and stuff, which is really good. They are expensive. They have a ton of health, and they're just really strong in general. But the biggest problem with them is that, other than the cost, of course, is that they're not good against multiple small enemies, because they attack kind of slowly, and multiple small enemies, like even these guys, the black ant soldiers, little black ant soldiers, even those guys can do a number on them. I think they're immune to confuse, but I'm not sure. But they can only attack like one of these guys at once, so it's easier for them to get swarmed. Same with little baby spiders. So they're only going in A tier. So I think that's good. Let me just look through this. Rapid fire, taunt, vigorous. Should I put pervasive up there? I mean, they're still really good. What else is here? I feel like they're on par with all the rest of this. They're on par with bullet ants, which I think is good. Both medic, all matabily are up here. I think they're the second strongest. Driver ants would be third. Then maybe termites. Either termites or these dudes, leaf cutters. Then we got slave makers, good when upgraded. Stun majors, trap jaws, pervasive, big-headed ant workers. Almost all termites. All termites except for the regular termite major and minor soldiers. Bullet ants. Tank wood ants. Leafcutter media. Fire ant workers. Regular workers. Army ant majors. Big-headed ant majors. Exploding ants of both kinds. Big-headed ant soldiers and black ant soldiers. Mortar ants and what are these dudes? army. I keep forgetting the word for army ants. Media army ants. Driver ant workers, and then stink ants and little black ants. Both are at the same level because they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum, both of which are bad in different ways. So that's a tier list. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you would change anything. I think that's it. Outro words. Bye.